Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Hey, how many of you out there, when
I
you were
don't
going
hear
to
you.
college, if you've gone to college, have actually participated in an internship? Oh, let me make sure that my sound is okay. Is that my sound? That is your sound, I think, Anita.
Nah, but yeah.
Just want to make sure I think that's your sound. How many of you have actually participated in an internship before you actually moved into a particular career and you were able to learn a couple of things as an intern and then actually move that into your professional career? So, we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight with our special guest, and we'll talk to her shortly. Well, tonight we have a really special guest. We have a really special guest, and we're going to be talking to her tonight a little bit more about this idea of lessons learned from an intern to a professional as well. So our guest tonight is Anita Galano, and we're going to talk to her shortly. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk about a few things that we actually have coming up here on Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, the live stream podcast. Pretty excited for all of you guys to be here tonight. The show is going to be amazing. We have a show this Friday. So this is a rescheduled show with Michael K. Jackson. And Michael K. Jackson is a public speaker, but he has a platform built on the idea of resilience. And we are going to talk about his plan and ideally the idea about how do you develop a plan for your life. I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to give it away what the plan is, but you have to join us this Friday evening at 7 p.m. with myself and Michael K. Jackson. So we're excited about that one. And then next week, do you struggle with getting things done? Do you procrastinate? Are you stuck with the paralysis of analysis and you feel like everything that you want to do, you sometimes push to the side because, hey, I'll get to that later? Well, we're going to talk about the art of getting things done with Tawana Taylor next week. She has a great plan and philosophy around getting things done. So you have to make sure that you join us next week, next Wednesday at 7 p.m. as well. Now, our community takeover is still going. We still do that on Friday evening. So this Friday evening, of course, we won't have it just because we're going to be having Michael K. Jackson on there. But be on the lookout for more information and dates for our community and also guests for our community takeover. The community takeover is that time frame where you as a community can sit down and just chat with myself and we could talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. If it's a business idea that you have, if it's something that you are struggling with as a leader, if it's something that you need advice for, please don't hesitate and actually make sure that you join us for the community takeover. But the cool part about the community takeover is that you can also get feedback. You can also get more ideas from the community at large, right? That is the goal for Worthy Retail U, the coaching community. It's for you to get more information to help you succeed in your current career, or if you're thinking about doing something else within your career. And this next slide, this is a little meta right here, right? This is a little, it's kind of weird seeing myself over here to my right, but we are going to be starting in September on Wednesdays, and it is going to be a lunch and learn on LinkedIn. I'm really looking forward to this because we are going to be delving into really hardcore retail leadership topics and guests. We're going to get really specific around what we're going to be talking about. Of course, if you guys have listened to us on our podcast for any measure of time, you know that our three pillars are around career advancement, helping retail leaders understand their culture and how they fit within that culture. And then the third pillar is communication, helping them find their leadership voice so that they can lead people effectively. because the one thing that we know is that retail leaders, every decision that they make impacts everyone every day all around the world. And there's no getting past that. So we want to spend some time on LinkedIn talking to retail leaders and talking about their journey, but also just me unpacking different topics relative to retail leadership as well. So we're excited about that process. If you're looking on YouTube, or if you're thinking about it, go over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you click that subscribe button and also that little bell. That will let you know when we have new videos and also live streams actually coming up as well. So I appreciate you going and doing that as well. And then on LinkedIn, as I just said, we are going to be talking a little bit more about our Lunch and Learn on Wednesday, starting in September. But you can also join our Worthy Retail U group. We have very specific information within that group about retail leadership, about how you can hone your skills as well. If you're on Facebook, thank you so much for looking at us on Facebook. We appreciate the support. Hit that like button. If you want to join our coaching, our executive coaching group, please don't hesitate. That is going to be Worthy Retail U Coaching, and you can look us up on the search bar and go ahead and ask for an invite, because it's actually an invite only. So as well. All right. So without further ado, I'm not going to waste too much time. Anita, and I'm just going to call her Anita. Here's why. Because we go back a while. We go back a little while. We have had the opportunity to work with each other at one of the biggest companies in the world. And Anita, at that point in time, she'll talk a little bit more about her career. But I want to talk about a little bit about Anita, the person, and we'll get into her career. So I'll let her talk about that. She is one of the most engaging individuals and warm-hearted individuals that you're ever going to meet. And when I first met Anita, I actually had moved down here from New York into the Ellicott City area, and she was helping us from a recruiting and internship standpoint with Target. I'll just go ahead and say the company. And our relationship from a professional standpoint just grew and grew and grew. But then there's also a personal side, that from a spiritual side, that Anita and I kind of share as well. And her husband, great guy. And so I'm just excited to actually have her here to talk a little bit about recruiting and internship, and then how does that transform to you as a professional. So without further ado, how are you doing? How are you doing, young lady?
I am doing great, Steve. It's so great to be here. You have such an amazing platform. But really honored to be here and talking to the community.
Excellent. Well, hey, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, and your kind of your career path, and it's also, more importantly, I think that the people and the students that you've been able to kind of help throughout your career.
Absolutely. So, as Steve mentioned, we worked together some years back in the retail sector, but my career has been very much of a zigzag. And I think even though it was very much nerve-wracking back in my years of school and about to graduate, I think I couldn't have it any other way. So I started in college with pre-med biology, out of all things. My dad was a doctor. He's not retired, back in South America. And when I was 5, I said I wanted to be a doctor. So it was almost the expectation. I realized, like you do in college, that maybe your idea at 18 may not necessarily be what you see yourself doing down the road. I was extremely lucky to find an opportunity that helped me, really, that guided me into what I love doing, which is working with college age students and really being able to impact their career path. For about 9 years, I did a lot of programming coming out of college. I did anywhere from campus recruiting for top 500 companies in different industries, anywhere from entertainment and TV and finance and retail, but also the human resources side, programming and the such. After that, I had the opportunity to transition into retail. I went the human resource path. I was the human resource executive for a very large store with Target, as you mentioned, and I did that for about 3 years. I feel like through that experience, through the hands-on application of running a business, leading teams. I have my honorary MBA with a human resource specialty. um,
Excellent.
and I was very, very lucky to transition back into working with students. So I did campus recruiting for 4 years up and down the East Coast, Mid Atlantic, Northeast, and I just really, really love that aspect. I did a little bit of professional recruiting, but really my heart is with college students. I have not transitioned to public accounting, but really the fundamentals of building a strong career, building your image as a professional really don't know boundaries, right?
Mm,
It's pretty, if you really boil it down, there's some really basic aspects skills that you build, whether you're an intern, you're entry level professional, or even down the road as you start new positions, as you work with new teams, that really can set you up for success.
excellent. Excellent. Well, before we get into some questions, let's make sure we engage a little bit with, hey, Laura, how are you doing? So Lauren's student teachers, and I think Laura's a teacher as well. So excellent. And then
Great.
Mr. Spoke Audio, sound is good tonight. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. He's a Mr. Robert Reed. So he has to get back to work. He just wanted to stop by and say hello. So thank you, sir. And then also Mr. John Ryan, thank you. Hello, Steve, catching you live. Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I really do. I really do. Thank you, man. He's a good buddy of mine, man. So thank you so much. Um,
Great.
one of the things that I wanted us to kind of unpack tonight a little bit was around some of those skills that the interns take, because I did an internship when I was in college as well, and I honestly believe I don't think I learned anything at that point in time. It was accounting. I was an accounting major, and
That's right.
yeah, remember that? And
What
I told
hired you?
yeah, exactly. Don't ask me why. I was an accounting major, and I didn't last long after accounting. But I remember my internship, and I remember as I went to SUNY Plattsburgh, way upstate New York, small college town, and they set me up with this accounting like firm. It wasn't really a firm. It was a one guy operation, and all I did was file. I was filing for the entire summer, and that was it. Internships today are are completely different probably than when we did it back in the day, or at least for myself. What are some of the tenets, if you will, of a really solid like internship kind of program, and what are the companies looking to get out of those interns after they finish that process?
Absolutely. I think I can relate a lot to that. I didn't have an internship. Obviously, I wasn't even in the right career path to begin with in college, but also there was this notion that an internship was not paid, and it was
Right.
more of trying to get some experience while doing the job for free. Although that might have been the case, again, I didn't actually look into it during my time, but it has definitely evolved. We are in a candidate market, especially in some industries like the one I'm in now, but just in general, the candidates are really, they have a lot more options that maybe they did in the past. And in times of COVID, right, as we have all transitioned to a hybrid, if not completely virtual recruiting strategy, the opportunities are even more available and, quite frankly, more equitable. Um, in terms of what these programs are now, it's really a recruiting tool. As much as it is for a student to figure out, is this the type of job, the type of industry that is for me, from a company perspective, regardless of the industry, is really about getting to students early, building that loyalty, getting to see them in a temporary environment,
Hmm.
um, with real life work. So nowadays, it's even though the opportunities are out there, I think it really puts the onus on the students to do their research, right? It's not just about adding something to your resume because it looks great that you did an internship, but are you being strategic in what you're looking for, so that you can check the box, right?
Hmm.
As in, yes, this is for me, or no, I now know this is not for me, right?
Right.
So that they can go into the next thing. From, as I mentioned, from the company standpoint, is that recruitment tool. Internships are meant, for the most part, especially in large organizations, regardless of the industry, they really are meant to be that transition into a full-time position. So you come in, you do an internship, you're assessed based on your performance. Um, as well as, your contributions that you can bring to the team. I like to stay away from the word, if you're a fit, because most companies, what they're trying to do, right, like, it shouldn't be that you're fit into everything that we already do, because otherwise there's no evolution,
Right.
there's no progress. It's more about, do you bring value to the group, and are you able to really take ownership of your career. So yeah, so most internship programs are very purposeful in providing a great opportunity for you to get that hands-on experience, but also give you an opportunity to perform and put you in an environment where it's like a test environment, where
Yeah.
you get to, be in the real world experience, and with the hopes that you would get an offer at the end. So it's very much the commitment from both ends.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to that word fit here in a second. You saw me write that down,
Yeah.
because that's I don't know if you and I think we may have had a previous discussion about that possibly, um, but I wanted to, you said something that really caught my attention because I've actually had this conversation recently. You talked about a candidate market, right? It's almost like a, in the housing industry, almost like a buyer's market, if you will, where the buyer actually has all the leverage, and you can come, you want to buy a home and it's 500 grand. Well, you know what, I have options. Either you drop that price down to 450, or I'll just buy this home. So I think, and I just had a conversation with my team a little bit around assessment and talent, and also the market is actually opening up, and so it is almost a buyer's market from an employee standpoint, or a candidate, excuse me, a candidate standpoint. What can how can candidates leverage that, right? Because even though it's a candidate's market, you don't want to, like, have all these different offers all over the place and say, okay, well, I got this company that want me, and they want me. But how do they leverage that ability of actually understanding that their skills are in high demand and there are a lot of companies that actually want them?
The way that I will introduce my answer is that it's, with great blessings come great responsibilities. I'm
Mm,
kind of mixing up some sayings there.
it's okay.
And the reason is, yes, there's a lot of opportunities, right? But I like how you compared it to buying a house. We live in a world where we need that immediate gratification. I know when I was buying a home, it was so frustrating, the fact that we would go visit homes and maybe, okay, finally I like it, but then you have to go through this entire process, right? There's value in the things that take a little longer and are a little harder. As I see different people at different stages of their career looking for a career change or looking for a new opportunity, it is so easy to be frustrated, right?
Hmm.
Because as much as there are many opportunities out there, right? How do you start the process? You submit an application, and then you're in that waiting pattern.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
you know
exactly.
you there's this feeling of, send my resume into the black hole of resumes. I don't know if they'll ever be
Resumes,
looked at.
do resumes still exist? I mean, I guess they do.
Still, I do believe, there'll be alternatives in the future. LinkedIn, plug in for LinkedIn,
Pretty much.
have a LinkedIn profile if you want to exist in the professional world. Um, but yeah, so with that, right, like, there comes a lot of responsibility, and I think part of the process of looking for a job, wherever, no matter what you are in your career, is building those skills of patience. And
Mm.
most importantly, as you know, Steve, I teach a class for freshmen and transfer students at University of Maryland. And one of the things that I tell them about, that this entire process of getting a job is not like one hit you're out, right? It really starts with that self-reflection. Who do
Mm.
you who you are, what do you like to do? In what environments do you bring, do you flourish? What can you bring to the table? What are some of the things that you have done and the skills that you have learned, right? Is I always say that my most important career experience was working at a restaurant. And working with college age students, I always get a double take because you go to college, you're trying to get your degree so that you can move forward with a career at that. But in the classroom, you don't learn a lot of the soft skills, hence the importance of internships, right? But you don't learn a lot of the soft skills that you need to be a successful professional. I think our education system trains you for 12 years plus to learn material, recite it, become an expert in that context, and move on to the next thing. While in a work environment, you have to work with people.
Yeah.
And what we're
Yes.
looking in terms of soft skills from a candidate when we talk about being well-rounded student, right, is not just the straight A's or just the great GPA. Is about, tell us about times that you've worked with groups. How did you resolve conflict? Time management. Yes, maybe you don't have an internship, but were you working two jobs? Shifting responsibilities. Those are all the things that is going to make you a great professional, regardless of the industry, because very unlikely that you will always be in a silo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know I went into so many
Oh,
tangents
oh
there,
no,
but
that's, I mean,
bring me back,
you had me
please.
writing feverishly because no, that was perfect. That was perfect because it actually goes into a couple other things, right? I want to talk a little. Gosh, I wrote down two other questions that I wasn't gonna ask, but and I know you're gonna rock them anyway. But you talked about soft skills, right? And when you and I were talking and doing the discovery call, you talked about three specific skills that an intern needs to have, and and I was just like, man, those are the same things that I'm talking to my team about. And these guys are 15, 16, 17 years in professional and all these other things. I'm like, these are the same skills. So can you give us those three skills those soft skills that you were talking about?
Yes, absolutely. And I will, start my answer by giving credit to my current position, because as I was learning a new industry and as I was getting feedback of the interns that did really well and the interns that didn't, I saw a pattern, right?
Mm,
It boils down. And then in retrospect, I started thinking, especially during our conversation, this applies regardless of anything, right? So, the main things it boils down to is asking questions, taking notes, and showing engagement.
mm,
And I'll elaborate on those, but I will say also that we're currently living in a very peculiar time, right? Like,
mm-hmm,
we were all used to what the normal was. We were yanked out of that without a say, in terms of how we lived, how we work, how we go to school. And it is really easy to think, well, if things were back to normal, it'll be different. If things were back to normal, then, I would enjoy this experience more, or I would be able to perform better, or this and that and the other, like the what ifs, right? But the same challenges when it comes to those three bullet points, right, is the same in person or virtually. So asking questions, again, going back to the fact that for students specifically going into an internship, they come from 12 years plus of becoming experts by the end of a semester on a particular subject. And as they go into the professional environment, they almost feel like they have to prove themselves.
mm,
And they don't want to ask questions because maybe my question's stupid, or maybe what are people going to think of me? While at the same time, if one person is brave enough, you see all the nodding heads
exactly.
because if you have a question, other people have it, right? So one of the things I tell my interns is practice. Like, college and even everyday life is practice. So be a little bit more vulnerable and unmute yourself, or make sure that that you ask that question, even if it's on the chat. I mean, we've been blessed with that, right? If you don't want to
Yes.
speak out,
Yes.
put it in the chat.
Exactly.
So asking questions, because and you'll see how they're all intertwined with each other, but you are showing interest, you are showing something that employers are always looking for, which is that curiosity.
Mm,
You may go into an interview and tell people that you love to learn, but if you never ask questions, are you actually proving that? Or you may go into an interview and say, no, I don't have any questions, right? Like you're
yeah.
not showing, your actions speak louder than words.
Yes.
So you want to be sure to ask questions, right? So if you actually get to that point where you've let go of the insecurities and ask questions, the next thing is taking notes. I think that was one of the
Oh,
very first lessons I learned when I had my very first job. I walked into my boss's office. I think he called me, or I went to ask a question, and as he was responding, I mean, it was quite embarrassing, and I was ashamed that I didn't think of it. But he's like, "Where's your notepad?"
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Are you going to write this down? Probably because he saw the deer in the headlights look that I had. But it's important, right? Is because you don't want to. There's one thing to feel vulnerable asking the question once, and sometimes when you're starting, when you're learning, it's okay to ask it a couple of times or ask somebody to explain it to you a different way. But in a way for you to show progress in your performance is that you're going to show that you're not going to make the same mistakes over and over again, right? Like
Right.
after a while, the question was answered. You should be able to make the progress, and that doesn't mean that you stop asking questions. Is if you get A and B down, right? You ask the
Yeah.
questions, you get it right. The idea is that the next questions that you ask are going to help you master C and D,
Yes.
and so on and so forth. So asking questions, and you can only do that if you take notes. Believe me, none of our
Yes.
brains work well enough to remember everything, especially when we're learning. The other plug I will give is for OneNote. I'm very much antiquated and paper and pencil person, or paper and a pen person. But um, OneNote is a life changer, especially for a professional, because you're able to do a quick look into and organize your notes even better. So that's the second piece. And then the last piece is showing engagement,
Mm,
right? How many times, what if during this call you saw me like this?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very sort of happy, right? Like our body language is part of our brand and what we represent. And again, our actions speak much louder than maybe what we're saying. So when you're in an internship on a full-time position, in person or virtual, you want to be sure that they get that you're interested, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it having your camera on, right? Right now it's so easy to
Yes.
turn it off and step away. Having your camera on, making sure that when you're in a meeting, and I know I get boiled down in that because of the whole multitasking thing, right? But if you are having an important conversation, make sure that you're looking at the camera, you're not multitasking, you're not looking at another screen where you have the actual video playing. Reaching out, participating in meetings. And again, this sounds like I'm maybe speaking only to this virtual environment, but this literally are the same challenges that I saw interns have in an in-person, in accounting, in retail, in every other environment. So I think, again, they're all intertwined because if you ask questions, you take notes, you're showing engagement. If you're unmuting yourself, again, they kind of just all work with each other.
100%. I actually just I was just watching a video earlier today on body language, and it was just like I was like, oh, I thought my body language I haven't pretty much mastered, but I learned something earlier today too about just they were talking about like since we're on camera, I can do it. They were talking about like your having your arms to the side, and when you're talking, some people talk like this. Like I'm like, really? So, do people really still talk? And he said, no, you should have them open. So when I hear you talking about engagement, I often think not just the idea of you verbally engaging, but you said it, you said it earlier. Well, just if I'm having a conversation with you and you're like this the entire time, you know you're not, yes, okay, great, yes, Steve, that's great, and then one answer questions. When I think about that from, I had an opportunity, and thank you for that opportunity to work with some students at the University of Maryland, when I was able to give a presentation, and connect with them about like diversity and inclusion. And one of the things that I had tried to do at that point in time was to engage with them like quickly. For me, I started calling them out, by name, and I didn't care. They over a period of time, they loved it because I was like, Anita, what are you doing? Are you playing a video game while I'm having this conversation with you? And they're like, no, Steve, no, Mr. Worthy, no, Mr. Worthy. And I was just engaging with them because I think sometimes from an engagement standpoint, you need to prompt people a little bit, because otherwise they may just kind of stay the same. And speaking of prompts, real quick, I just want to make sure I go back and connect with anybody that's here. So hi, Steve, I'm catching you live. I'm not sure who you are, but thank you for catching myself and Anita live. They feel the same. I think I think this was in reference to something that you were talking about, not so much with the body language piece, but I think it was from the interview process that you were talking about. And Mr. John, Mr. Coffee Talk and Tech, asked this question. He said, "Can a person skilled be equal, but their personality can separate themselves as a choice and candidate?" He said you kind of answered it already, but what are your thoughts about that? Because he said, okay, Anita's answering it a little bit right now, but what are your thoughts about that? I actually like that question.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for bringing it up. One of the things we talk about with this age group that I work with the incoming class of professionals, is both from a professionalism but also building your brand. So everything that you do, everything you say, your body language, your facial expressions, what you like, what you don't like on social media, everything is creating an image, right? Whether you're intentional or what's actually out there or not. So when it comes to an interview, for example, when you're to answer the question, um, it's important for you to be yourself. I actually had a candidate that wrote me right before her internship or her interview. She texted me. She said, "Any last words of wisdom?" And I said, "Be yourself.
Yeah.
Enjoy the conversation." At the end of the day, it's a two-way street. As much as, yes, you're trying to show who you are, what you bring to the table, and why you will be a great candidate, they also are trying to find out who you are, right? Because they
Yes.
can look at all that information in your resume or your LinkedIn profile, or in some cases, dig through your social media, right? So, but but they're trying to understand who you are, who you are as a person overall, right? What are your passions? And that's why it's important, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier. This career process is this constant evaluation of who you are, what drives you, so that you can find the right opportunity. And once you get to that interview process, hopefully a lot of that conversation will be a little bit more organic.
Yeah.
Your passion will shine through because you've done the research that, let's say, for example, this company is very much involved with the community and they're making real change, and you've done that research, you've talked to people about it. So when you're in that interview, I mean, you're just a ball of energy in your own personality, right?
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
does that mean being a naturally extremely painfully shy person? I as I say these words, it can sound intimidating, but I mean, we can all be passionate and engaging in our own unique way. But during an interview, you want to leave that emotional footprint.
Yeah.
Um, and that may come from the questions that you ask. That may come from part of your elevator pitch and intro, actually saying something a little bit about yourself. Maybe what you're passionate about, or what brought you to this industry or this career, because something is going to resonate with the other person at the other end of the desk, of the screen, of the line, and they're going to remember whether you get the position or not.
Yes. Yes.
It's, many times especially as you get higher into the career, you may be applying for a limited number of positions, if not just one, and they might have a lot of highly qualified candidates, and they have to choose one. They may love you, but you may not be that choice at the moment. However, again, you leave a brand with how you take the news.
Correct.
Unfortunately, I have
Correct.
seen both ends of completely burning bridges because you're disappointed, to also just being grateful and open to feedback, and being open to staying connected, and how that ended up becoming an even more amazing opportunity down the road. So at the end of the day, yes, that emotional footprint that you leave, whether you're conscious of it or not, will set you apart.
Excellent. So I just want to give a quick shout out to James. What's going on, man? Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And then Coffee Talk and Tech had one more question. It says, if you're in, or maybe more of a statement, if you're in an interview and they ask a question, they are looking for that engagement. I mean, 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. I think the worst thing that you can do is to, especially when they ask you, do you have any, hey, do you have any questions to ask us? Man, listen to me. That is one of the best questions. Here's the thing. I'm one of those weirdos. I am honestly one of those weirdos who actually like interviews. I am, I,
You
I am,
do.
I am, I am, I am in the serious minority with any of those individuals who actually like interviews. And I actually haven't had to do tons of them, of course, throughout my career, but I actually do, because for me, it's not just them interviewing me. I'm interviewing them, and I turn it on its head, if you will, by asking them that question. When they ask you that question, hey, tell me, do you have any questions for us? Um, I think that's an important question to ask. Can I ask you one question though? For that question, that one question that everybody dreads, it's the very first question, and you know it's coming, and no one wants to answer it, and they tap dance around it so much. That dreaded question is, tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself. What is some of the best ways? What's the best way, from in your experience, to answer that question? Because I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate, because I think we have similar personalities where, we are able to bring things from our outside life into that interview process, but a lot of people aren't, in their personality and all this other stuff. So anyway, give me the best answer for that question.
Yeah, so I can totally understand. I mean, it's a lot easier being on this end, Steve. You and I have worked together on
Yeah.
this side of the interview when we're looking at new talent and we're asking those questions, telling them to relax. We want to get to know you. But I'm very much on the other side where even with all these years of experience and teaching and coaching, when it comes to me, I don't want to sell myself. But what I have found to be very helpful, both from a personal experience and as I coach students, it's bullet points, right? You've probably heard of the term elevator pitch. It's called that for a reason. You're not going to sit there and give a movie version of your life while you're going from floor 2 to 7. It should be something quick to the point that gives them an idea of who you are and what you do. So in terms of bullet points, who you are. So for example, Anita Galiano, senior campus recruiting for CohnReznick. I work out of the Bethesda office, right? I covered these offices. Quick overview of who I am in a quick capsule. Then focus on 2 to 3 things that you're proud of in terms of your achievements. So, for example, currently working on leading the diverse strategy for my firm. Very excited to be working with our new office in Miami that's opening up. And then you wrap it up with something personal. So I live in
Yes.
Washington, D.C., but I
Yes.
grew up in South America. And I'm super excited to be here because blah, 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 right? Like, so very quick, to the point, high overview. The way that I like to present it is your interview, like working backwards, your interview is the movie of who you are as a
Mm,
candidate, right? The elevator pitch, the cover letter, the resume, that they are the 15, 30, and 45-second previews of who you are as a professional. So don't get tangled up into the details. It's just, a quick preview to get you interested, to get you to that interview where you're going to actually see, okay, let me unpack who you are as a candidate.
excellent. Excellent. I think we have a couple more people here. Hey,
Yeah.
sorry. Hi, Stephen and Anita. Hello, whoever you are. How are you
Hi.
doing? Let us know who you are. This helps me. I am new in my role. Excellent. Excellent. We
Congrats.
would like to actually, if you have another question or something like that. We are open to any question that you may want to present to us, if you're new in role, and what we may be able to help you with as well too. And then and then John said, Steve, we are both weirdos. LOL. I love what you're saying. I'm interviewing your company. That's exactly. Ah, It's me, Leslie. Oh, how are you? How are you? Um, Speaking of that new enroll, because I do have probably three more questions. We got time, but I'm actually working with someone, and they're brand new. They're brand new enrolled. This is more of like a commentary. I apologize
Mhm.
real quick because they're struggling a little bit with trying to understand how they fit within their new leadership role and understand and you and I agree with this or think like this is that you don't manage people, you manage processes, tasks, protocol, things like that, but you lead people. And I've been trying to help that individual kind of understand that more so than anything else as they move into that new role, because they want to manage that, and they have to use the word micromanage. They just want to manage their people. One of the things that I saw you do, I didn't see a lot of their HR role when we worked together, but I heard about your footprint that you left from an HR standpoint. What advice do you have for those individuals that are getting into a new role? It could be new store manager, multi-unit, or whatever. What are some of the keys that you feel like to their success that they need to implement? We talked about the soft skills already, as well, but what are some of those other things as we transition soft skills, interview questions, and now they're kind of in the role and they're trying to move up into understanding how they need to impact other people?
Yeah, actually, this gives me flashback to a webinar I was listening to this morning, and it was more around engagement. But you have to remember that they are people. There is a human being with things that happen before work, after work, outside of work. That that you need to keep in mind and connect with, right? Like that engagement piece is really important. By no means, as a leader, as a manager, should you try to be best friends or friends with your team, because I know that was the first time I was in a leadership role. That was my challenge. I was pretty green in that situation, and I had to learn and grow a lot. But it's about understanding, just like you did your self-assessment of who you are and what makes you successful and where you want to be, helping your team no matter what role they're in, whether they're an hourly member, whether they're an hourly manager, an executive. You want to help them understand and go through that personal growth process, and then really understand what they need from you. You are
Mm,
serving them as their leader.
mm.
You're not there to just charge and command and you do as I say because that's what we do. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of the memes, or I love the one where somebody is pointing and
Hmm.
and is on top of them, and the
Oh yeah,
one that's right in front of them. I
yes,
absolutely love that
yeah,
that visual, because at the end of the day, again, another saying you probably have heard: people leave people.
yes,
They don't leave a job, they don't leave a company. I mean, when you say they do this, they don't do this, they're talking about one specific person or a small group of people that made that impact in their career. So um, as you figure out in your new role your leadership style,
hmm,
you
hmm.
also need to understand that everyone in your team is going to need a little bit of a different style from you, right?
Mm,
Just because you lead this way and this is how you operate and this is how you're wired, you also need to understand that somebody will maybe in your team needs a little bit more of that follow up, right?
yes.
Just to keep them productive. Doesn't mean that you're micromanaging them, but you know that that person needs that. Well, the other person in your team could find that so aggravating and so counterproductive. Maybe they just
Yes.
need more of that personal connection, understanding that you see them as a person. I mean, I remember as an HR, one of the things that we talked about is, keeping the team engaged and feeling appreciated. But if I went and talked to 200 people in my store, everyone had a different idea of what that meant. We
Yes.
first thought it was okay, we just requisition food and just throw food at them, or gift cards. The majority of the people wanted a genuine relationship with their leader, somebody that knew who they were, somebody that may ask about their kids, and if they had a recital last week, how did it go? Do you have pictures? Somebody that just valued them as a person. So a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. It's funny because I did an impromptu live stream a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about the difference in picking your team versus inheriting a team. And I talked about my
Mm.
story of moving down from New York to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was probably about maybe 2 years out of the Air Force at that time as well. And I remember when I took over a team and I was leading that team, pretty much like I was in the service and didn't care about who they were, didn't care about, their thought process. I'm here. I'm the quintessential positional leader at that point in time. And then I had a fellow a peer there. His name was Victor. He was from New York as well. He took me out to lunch. I think it was probably about I want to say after a week and a half. He took me out to lunch, and these words he said to me. I think this is going to probably be the title of my book. He said, "Steve, that stuff doesn't work down here." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You actually have to get to know people." I said, "For what?" Like I'm their leader in their position, and I think I was 25. I think it was 25 or something like that, maybe 26. I don't know. Like, no, what are you talking about? Like, that stuff doesn't work here, man. You literally need to like learn about their family, ask them what they did for the weekend. That way you'll get more buy-in. I was like, I'm not doing that. So yeah, I didn't do it for like 2 weeks. So then one Sunday, I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to come in on Monday morning. I'm going to do it. And we were meeting, just about to meet. And I said, okay. I said, hey, before we start talking, I just really wanted to know like how everybody's weekend went. Anita, you could have heard a pin drop. Like their mouth probably was like, 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 really? Like, what do you? Why? Is there some ulterior motive? Because I've never asked that question before, but that experience set me up for learning so much more that I needed to learn more about people as I led them, and it was just an eye opening experience because I still see some of those leaders nowadays as you well do. They lead one way. Oh, it is. You are setting yourself up for failure if you lead, very stoically or just in one gear. You have to have three or four, five, six different gears to be able to lead different people to get the most out of them. Apologize for that little commentary. I went down that road or
No,
whatever, but
no. If I could add to that,
yes,
right? Like,
absolutely.
from a talent acquisition standpoint, we see the turnover. And again, people don't leave the company, they leave a leader.
Hmm.
And does that mean that you're catering to their every need and they're always going to be
Hmm.
happy with you?
No.
No. But as you were sharing your personal experience, all I can think is all the people that you led and how, like, anytime your name comes up, is, oh my God, I love Steve. How's he doing? But it's because of that. The other thing I will say is consistency as a
Yeah.
leader, right? Fairness and consistency is going to be tough. Everyone has good days and bad days at work. Everybody has good days and bad days as a leader or as somebody that's following somebody. But when you're consistent and you are accountable, because you are
Hmm.
human, even as a leader, you're going to make mistakes. Owning up to them, not just hiding behind the fact that you're going to ignore them.
Yes.
Um, and following up. That's, again, they're human beings that you're leading, and treating them as humans. It's really important.
It is. It is. And I lie. So we may go over. I try to keep it to an hour,
That's
but we
fine.
we may go over. So I got to bring it back to retail here, right? Because it's worthy retail you. So and this question is a little selfish, and it's not really selfish. I mean, yeah, maybe I'm trying to gather some data. So this is a little selfish, but it's what are in 1 year in retail, and this is a softball question for you because I know you're going to crush it. In 1 year in retail, what do you think a person would learn about themselves if they had to spend 1 year in retail? They like right out of college, or a person that's transitioning from, one career to the next, and they had to spend 1 year, 1 year in retail. What are one or two things that they would learn about themselves?
My goodness, so much to go into that
I
question.
know, right? It's a loaded
I'll try
question.
to keep it.
Yeah, you
But
can probably give me
I,
like four or
I think
five.
I think it starts with you, and again, it's that vulnerability, understanding that you don't know everything. I think there's this myth that, oh, it's just retail, right? Oh, it's just customer service. Um, professionals in the retail industry, I mean, my hat's off to people that grew up in this, that transition into it. I mean, it is customer facing and it's not always pretty, but you learn so much if you're open to that, right? So I think you learn who you are as an individual, what are your comfort levels, and remember that you only grow in that uncomfortable area where
Mm,
things are not the way they usually are. They're not always going right. Um, you also learn how much you can achieve after you get past that point.
yeah.
Um, and how much you depend on your team. Going back to that leadership question earlier, yes, you may have the title, but if you're not appropriately leading your team, either there's going to be turnover, or you're not going to have dedication, you're not going to have the buy-in, and then you're doing their job because the buck ends with you, and you're not really leading. You're just overpaid team member, right?
Right.
Or whatever your team's title is, but you learn to I think, be graceful with other people.
Mm,
um, just starting with yourself, whether you like it or acknowledge it or not, you learn to be graceful with yourself, and other people as well. What else? I mean, just so much. I told you I have like
go
a
ahead.
little master's degree from my years in retail on the front lines. I think working with others too, like finding those compromises, and I mentioned earlier, getting the buy-in not only from the people that work for you, but also your peers.
Yeah.
Because again, no one, and I remember in the structure that we were in, there's different departments, and the entire store is not successful if only one wheel is working, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
it's
Agreed.
it and it goes back to building those relationships and being mindful of how you're supporting another person's department when they're not there. Treating other people's needs as your own. So many things, but hopefully that gives some answer to your question.
No, it's great. That's great. That's great content. No, that's great. I appreciate that. And he says, "Great tips, Anita. Thank you."
Okay,
Um, I think it goes back to the food makes employees happy. Yes, it does. Yes, it
it does.
does.
That
It
is
it,
not
it
the only thing.
not the only thing. Not the only thing, but it's a really big one. It's a really big
It
one.
is.
And then what's going on,
Oh, I
JP High
remember my
Tech?
holidays.
Yeah, exactly. How are you doing, JP? Thanks for showing up, man. I
Hi.
appreciate that. And then I want to say how much patience you really have. I'm not sure if they're talking about you and I, or we're maybe talking about something that you may learn about yourself within retail after you've been in retail for a while, learning how much patience you have learned and developed over time. If I could say, that's probably one of the biggest things that I think I've learned about myself is that ability to have patience, and also problem solving, right? I don't think a
Absolutely.
lot of people, I think that's why I niched down into this retail leadership areas, because I think a lot of retail leaders, we are taken for granted in the context that we're not really seen as leaders. We're in retail, but man, there are so many hourly problems that you are solving. And then, far be it from me in my previous roles, right now, I walk into one store, they have all these different things going on, turnover and trucks late and all this other stuff, and then I walk in the store and I want to do a visit, you know, and now it's like, and now everything else is just like turned upside down, and so you have to learn how to kind of, I hate to use that, it's an overused word this last couple of years. You have to pivot like really quickly, but that's what you have to do. And we got a couple more comments. I just want to make
Yeah.
sure I got everybody. Oh, the patience. I wanted to learn you wanted to learn in your first year. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I hope you a year. I want what I learned in my first year. Okay, I think the patience. Patience is what they learned in their very first
I
year.
will say,
That's
I
what it
will
is.
say with patience, right? It is a muscle, and how do you build your muscles? By putting resistance on it. So I know sometimes we're like, "Oh, I wish I had more patience." Well, careful what you wish for, because you
Lord have
can
mercy.
certainly get more patience, but it's going to come through these challenges. And you know, to what I was saying earlier, I mean, I think retail leaders could rule the world
Oh,
with
oh yeah.
the experience on the everyday. Something else that you learn is from, I guess, from the pivot, kind of to go
Hmm.
off of
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
It's how nothing goes to plan, but you do need a plan,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because that sets
yes,
you up for success and it keeps you
yes.
focused on what you were able to achieve. Because nothing, just like in life and your career and everything else, nothing will ever go 100% according to plan. So yeah, I really do think retail leaders could rule the world.
Oh man, I love that. That is so true. Like you need a plan, but nothing goes to plan, but you need a plan. And that is that's actually a good episode right there because it is so true when you think you have the best laid plans. We're talking about different sets, adjacencies, and seasonal, and different things that are kind of about to come to your store, and you have a really great plan, and then you don't receive half the product, or you receive more product than you thought. That never happens in retail, so I'm lying on that one. That never happens. No one receives more than what they need from a seasonal standpoint. So I just lied on that one. My last two questions are really the canned questions that I ask every guest. And the first one is, what's something that you have recently changed your mind about?
But I've changed my mind about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that was not in my prep question.
I know. I know. I always bring that last one
Well,
on you.
I will
I know.
say, well, okay, so kind of going with that idea that I talked about earlier in terms of um, understanding yourself. I think
Mm.
the other piece too, and it's interesting because it's something basic that we teach in my class to the freshmen in college, right? You think that it would be just check and you've learned it, but is that you continuously need to have that self assessment.
Mm.
If you would have asked me 3 years ago if I would
Mm.
have, been able to do my job in a fully virtual environment, my heart would break. I love being on campus. I love talking to students. I'm a hugger.
Oh yeah.
Making those connections. But in the current environment, we've been pushed out of our comfort zone and we've been able to grow because of that. So I think, will recruiting down the line be fully virtual? I think potentially eventually, right? Like I think more
Hmm.
of a hybrid component is going to be more realistic as we hopefully soon will be out of the woods with the pandemic. But you know, thinking of somebody that used to feel like I could only do my job in one particular way,
Right.
that's something that I've changed my mind on.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, one of the last question. This is the easy one though. This is the easy one. One of the things that I often talk about is that leaders they don't take the time. A lot of times we go from project to project, meeting to meeting, Zoom to Zoom, right? And we really don't take some time to pause. And this was basically, this question comes out of a book that I read on essentialism, and the question talks about like what's important now. So as a leader, there are so many things that are vying for our attention, but that question, when you ask that question, it should give you time and reason to pause and to really kind of self-assess, to your point, around what's important for you right now in your life. So I'm asking you, like right now, what's important now for Anita?
Important. Well, I think it kind of aligns with the pandemic and everything that we've all personally grown in many ways, and the fact that I'm hitting a very important milestone birthday
What,
of
21?
over the hill. Over
21?
the hill. Yes, 40. Just
So,
add a couple more years there. I'm hitting that in about a week or so. It's
oh,
just understanding not to sweat the small stuff. And I know I've heard it before, and it was feedback from my very first job experience. I used to stress out so much, and having those aha moments lately of some things are just not that big of a deal.
yeah,
They're just not. And I think sometimes we end up sabotaging our happiness or joy or productivity by just getting stuck in the small stuff. But and it takes practice, right? Just like patience, it
yeah,
does take practice.
excellent.
So for me, it's just having a little bit more of that peace of mind and having a more relaxed view whether it's personal or work related.
Excellent. Well, John said he had to go. I appreciate you, John, for stopping by. But we
Thanks.
actually have someone that says happy birthday.
Oh,
See?
thank you. I
See?
appreciate it.
See? That was pretty cool. Thank you. Thank you. Whoever said happy birthday. We appreciate that. Well, oh my gosh. Well, Anita, I just want to thank you so much for being on Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. And I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. I know the audience, the listeners, whoever's listen to this live, but anybody that's going to listen to it on the replay, they're going to get so much great information out about how to learn things from an intern, but also how that translates to them as being a professional. Your insight, your perspective, your experience that you've been able to bring to the table tonight has been amazing. I want you to make sure you hang out in the green room for a second while we close up as well too. So everyone, thank you so much for being here. Oh, let me hold on for a second. Let me make sure you say goodbye too. I want to make sure you say goodbye. I don't know why I
Yeah,
cut to
no,
myself. That
thank
was a
you.
little
No, I
selfish.
really,
That was a little
I
selfish.
really appreciate being here. Steve, I know I'm your biggest fan, not only from our relationship, but I've just also got the opportunity to work with you and learn so much with you. So I know the community here has just such a great value in listening in each and every week to the content you are providing. So it was a pleasure being here. You can certainly reach out to me. Maybe Steve, you can put my LinkedIn information. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And everybody, please stay safe out there.
100%, 100%. Thank you guys. We'll see you this Friday for Mr. Michael K. Jackson, and then again on next Wednesday. As I always say, have a great day, have a great night, and God bless.